Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this session today. My name is Sandy Hertz. I'm an e-learning consultant, instructional designer, and I am passionate about open education resources, and global collaboration. Today, I'm going to have a conversation about open education and open education resources with Frances Ferreira from the Commonwealth of Learning. Frances has been with COLA's Education Specialist, Basic Education and Open Schooling since 2007. She's initiated the development of various resources for open schooling and co-edited the publication Perspectives on Distance Education, Open Schooling in the 21st Century. Previously a teacher by profession, Frances was the director of the Namibian College of Open Learning. Hello, Frances. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Hi, Sandy. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Frances, I'd like to start by asking you some general questions, and then we'll look at your project specifically afterwards. What do you see as being the big issues for education and development in the developing world?
Yes, Sandy, I think the biggest challenges for education and development is improving access and also retention in quality basic education. Access to quality education remains inequitable, especially in rural areas, with girls particularly disadvantaged. Despite the encouraging progress which was made to increase access to schooling, the latest edition of the Global Education Digest of UNESCO reveals that an alarmingly high number of children are repeating grades and leaving school before completing the primary school cycle or lower education. So there are many reasons for them to drop out, and one of it, in my humble opinion, is the relevance of the curriculum in many countries. So I think the big issues for me in education and development is really reorienting the existing curricula, existing education curricula, to make it more relevant, and then provide relevant curricula for sustainable development. Those are the big issues for me, because why are they dropping out? The relevance of the curriculum, but also why is the success rate not as what we anticipated it? It has to do with the quality of the teaching and learning experience. Those are the issues.
So with those issues, how does an open strategy fit with those?
I think one of the big things, if you link it to development again, development cannot take place if we talk about 71 million students who are out of school. One of the key aspects of quality education at the systems level is to provide sufficient resources. And I think I want to look at this as a puzzle where you have to make the pieces fit. So for a lack of resources, you have to find the piece which is available resources or the promise and potential of available open education resources. For poor quality of education, which leads to repetition and in some cases dropout, you can find an open strategy that can allow you to integrate OER and technology-mediated teaching, which can then enhance the learning experience. So an open strategy can really speed up the process for developing relevant curricula, as well as the diversification of the curricula. So an enabling environment where an open strategy is in place will allow a learner-centered pedagogy, it will allow collaborative practices, and it will allow quality resources.
Yeah. So what are some of the open projects that you've been involved in?
Oh, I was involved in some exciting projects around the Commonwealth. As you have mentioned earlier, I was involved in some of them. I initiated it. The first very exciting one was the development of OER in 20 school subjects across 6 countries in Africa and in the Caribbean. Now, we haven't published all 20 subjects on our website, but it was 20 subjects. There's 17 on the website, where we worked in a collaborative way to develop OER, which were country specific for those specific countries, and it was the first for those countries. And those OER can then be repurposed in other countries. The countries involved were Trinidad and Tobago, Namibia, Zambia, Botswana, Seychelles, Lesotho. Those were the 6 countries. So that was a first for open schooling. Another project that I'm involved at the moment is the development of OER that's underway in Bangladesh, and again in Trinidad and Tobago. And here in Trinidad and Tobago, we are now working with the Metal Industries company, which is responsible for technical vocational education programs in Trinidad. So we are working with them to develop OERs in 3 subjects. In Bangladesh, the OER is specifically tailored to the needs of girls. After we have done a baseline, what are the specific subjects they are interested in. And then we are also working in Botswana and Malawi to develop more OERs, more in technical and vocational education. Furthermore, the Commonwealth Open Schooling Association agreed to work with Notesmasters Global, and they are developing online content, and we are supporting that in Belize. I just returned from Belize last week. On Friday, we launched 7 OER in 7 school subjects in Belize, which was developed the past year. And in Seychelles, our consultant just returned from Seychelles, where they trained over 160 teachers and curriculum officers to develop OER for the Seychelles. And that is for the conventional schooling in Seychelles. And the same is happening also in Zambia. So we are really involved in some exciting projects at the moment. And one of the publications which was launched last year in Abuja in Nigeria was the case studies that we have written up on the OER experience of the 6 countries, and the title of the publication is OER Opening Doors. So that you can also find on our website. It's quite interesting, the experiences and the challenges and the successes that these teachers went through in developing the OER.
It's fascinating. And you mentioned a little bit some of the issues associated with it. What are some of the problems you face in trying to bring about this open approach? Are there cultural issues, quality issues, gender identity issues?
I think you have summed it up very, very, very clearly there, Sandy, that those are indeed the issues, and some of the issues that I personally experience in these projects is really the issue of quality is the first one that comes. Even before they start with the work, there is a question of can the curriculum content developed as OER be the same as curriculum content that's copyrighted. So there is an understanding that OER is of lesser quality in some corners. So it's important to understand and to make our partners understand that it is the same instructional design principles. You would know perfectly well as an instructional designer that it's the same principles that you follow, whether it is a copyrighted or a Creative Commons licensed content here. And what people should understand, it's the same principles, however, the difference lies in the licensing. So it's a different license to make it more available and for people to repurpose it. But that is a big issue, quality. People want to understand that it's the same quality. The second issue is really access to relevant resources. We can find OER in many subjects, but you have mentioned an example there about culture and gender issues like that. For instance, since I was in Trinidad before going to Belize, where I worked with we reviewed some of the content developed, the OER developed by the metal industries corporations, companies, teachers. And one of the challenges that they, for instance, faced was to find relevant OER in a subject like electrification, because of the different voltages, the different power plugs, the different color codes for the wiring and stuff like that. So it's not a matter of merely just cut and paste because it's an OER on electrification. They have to make sure that it is culturally relevant, that it is context specific. So those are challenges, and there is a long way still for us to really educate our developers in that regard. And together with that is really searching, and the time that it takes to search and find the relevant resources. Some of the teachers really struggle, and one of the issues why they are struggling is the affordability of connectivity. For me and you sitting here in Vancouver, in Canada, it is something that we don't normally think about because it is there, it's everywhere. You find wireless, no matter where you are, it's easy to access the internet. So connectivity is not really an issue, but it's a big challenge in developing countries. Because students have access to a mobile phone or a smartphone, it doesn't mean they can, or teachers, they can automatically search and find. Bandwidth is the other issue. So we find that bandwidth is the other challenge through this work that we have done. In cases that it is the available bandwidth is not sufficient to meet the demand. And it can be very frustrating and sometimes detrimental to some of our projects where people are saying, no, we can't do this anymore. It takes too much time. All my bandwidth has been taken up and I didn't finish the work. So there is this constant challenge actually with the bandwidth, the connectivity, and making sure that people can afford it. The issue of gender, the issue of context-specific images is the other one, because sometimes people find an excellent OER and that they want to repurpose, but then the images and also the language is not context-specific, so it's a little bit of more work than in that. And some people, they may be not so committed and they just put it like that, and it is important when you review that, when there's peer reviews, that people really look into those issues and say, but the image that I, for instance, find here in Bangladesh cannot be the same image that I will put in a book here in British Columbia, or the same image that I will put in a book in Trinidad and Tobago. It's different images because we want to make sure that it speaks to the audience, that it is really centered and contextualized. So while there is a myriad of OER out there, we have a long way in really building the capacity of the developers working with us to make sure that they adhere to those principles.
You've got a long ways to go, but you've also, your projects are innovative and a satellite example to, to people in the developing world to try and do the same sorts of things that you're doing. So as we're trying to raise awareness about open education, locally, nationally, internationally, worldwide, where next for you? What new ideas do you have for developing open strategies?
That's a very interesting question, because that is the first challenge that I forgot to mention, that we were faced with when we started the first OER initiative some 6-7 years back, because there was no OER policy, there was no enabling environment within institutions to develop really OERs, and it was a new thing, and it was a strange thing. So immediately then we realized it's important that for them to embrace OER, there should be some guidelines within the institutions, there should be some policies to direct them. And so we worked with the Commonwealth Open Schooling Association, which is a network of over 22 open schools across the Commonwealth. And they, with our support, with the Commonwealth of Learning support, developed their OER policy. So all the open schools who signed up for COMOSA, they have to adhere to that. But it's easier said than done, because yes, we adhere to that in as far as COMOSA, but when it comes to the institution, what am I doing? So I can still do my own thing and you maybe won't know. And so we made a conscious effort last year, in the early part of 2013, to support the development of OER policies within open schools. And we had a symposium in Kenya where we had representatives from more than 8 Commonwealth countries associated with COMOSA. And out of that symposium, 5 of the open schools represented at that symposium developed their own OER policy. And so we have made that success there, but as I've said, COMOSA is more than 22, so we still have a way to go to ensure that all our COMOSA partners will have an OER policy. Only then I can sort of relax and say they have now to respect and honor the policy. It is the law they made for themselves, because they can easily break that. So what we have done to ensure that the way forward is maybe easier to walk in developing OER policies, we have developed a guide facilitating OER symposiums. So, and that is on our website, it's on the wiki. I have sent you a link to that yesterday, where any institution, whether it's an open school or whether it's a Ministry of Education, whether it's a conventional school or a university, they can use that and they can facilitate their own symposium to develop an OER policy. And that is one of the exciting things that we will do more assertively in the next years to come, to ensure that there's more ownership in that regard, but also more policies that we can say that will facilitate the development and repurposing of OER. So that is a tool that we will use to ensure that we have more OER ambassadors within our institutions, because it's easy for us to spread the word from here, but we need foot soldiers. We need people on the ground to really spread the OER gospel, if you like, and to ensure that people are really into embracing OER and repurposing it, because, as I've said, we cannot develop with 71 million students out there dropping out or not having access to school. But if we have more policies that will allow the repurposing and development and integration of OER into even conventional classrooms, we will be in a position to bring those students back, because it is possible, as I've said, for this puzzle to be completed if we really bring the two together. But for us, the way forward is really to do more advocacy work, to ensure more policies are developed, to ensure that we have more OER ambassadors on the ground, and to integrate the use of OER not only in open and distance learning, but in conventional schools also, because it will also make education more affordable, where governments are struggling to provide resources to schools. If they make use of OER, it will be more cost effective, and they can do more with less. So that will be our focus for the next 6-year plan, really to integrate OER and technology by developing policies, but also to do more research on the successes that we have achieved so far. And because people normally say yes, but how do you prove that? You cannot just tell the story
Right.
without having any proof. And for that reason, we will do more research and write more case studies. The first one was the book that I have talked about earlier. And we hope through that we will convince more people into OER and ensuring that more students will have access to a quality education which is equitable.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today, Frances. You've made a huge impact into open schooling around the world, and I applaud your efforts. And you know, the difference you're making in the developing and developed world is quite phenomenal. So, thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much, Sandy. That's very kind of you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.